car. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, you better, okay? Here we go. Dancing around and spilling wine. You look good in my hotel robe. Steam in the shower, singing slide. Wash your bone, we're gonna need a little bit more soap. Fly to Miami in the morning. We better make this one count. You're so heavy, I'm holding, I'm not worried about the sound. We're waking up the people down the hall. You're a bullet, I can't help but saying Toro, Toro. And when they buzz me for the lollipop.
And that is, no, I should do it like more, top 40 style. And that's Remy Wolf with Toro. I'm doing everything I can to help Remy Wolf's career. I think she should be more famous than she is. It's not going to be the song of the summer, but I would not be upset if it were. That's not how the song of the summer works, however. And we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about, I don't know yet, because it's Ask or Tell Me Anything. And on Ask or Tell Me Anything, you have the right, the obligation, maybe even, to call 888-720-9677, otherwise known as 888-720-WNPR. And if you do, chances are I will put you on the air, and you will say things, and then I will say things, and that's how it all works. And yes, I was like battling a cold all last week, and I think I've put it behind me, sort of, but I still have that guy who recently had a cold voice. And I just want to say before I take the first call, which will be Joe from Waterbury, we also have Tyler from Manchester waiting to talk. I was really, really careful during the pandemic. The two people closest to me were medically vulnerable, and I didn't therefore want to bring a disease to them. And so I masked probably more than you did and longer than you did. And I was, I socially distanced a lot. And, but even then coming out of it, I don't know, I guess I was sort of lucky. The reality is I had a cold in 2019, late September 2019. And that was the last cold or other kind of, comparable infectious disease, flu, COVID, RSV. I didn't have anything like that for almost 5 years. And then I got a cold. And it turns out over the course of 5 years, I'd completely forgotten what colds were like. I had I didn't know what you're supposed to do or anything. But anyway, I think I managed to avoid infecting anybody else. I feel good about that. And we actually got some shows on the air, which may or may not have been a smart thing to do. And this week, we are all ready to go with some new stuff. And let's get started right now. Once again, the number, 888-720-WNPR, 888-720-9677. Let's hear from Joe in Waterbury. Hi, Joe.
Hey, Colin, how are you?
Just fine.
Good. Hey, I was calling, we had the big news last week with the stock market breaking the 40, and I was kind of interested on your take on that. Is this sustainable with the current state of, when we look at the economy the way it is, and is there a potential recession, in your opinion, do you think, headed our way shortly right after this?
Right. So I understand your question, I believe. I don't know why anyone would care what I think about this, but I will tell you what I do think about it. I first of all think I would look at it the other way. I mean, the stock market is not necessarily a collectively reliable picture of economic reality, but it's something close to that. I don't think the Dow breaks 40,000 in an environment where the smartest minds in investment and the smartest minds in business leadership are thinking we're heading towards a recession. I also think when the Dow does something like that, once again, it's not a perfect predictive mechanism any more than a betting market is, but it is sort of a betting market. And you have to look at that and think, well, the people who are moving money around right now, they apparently don't think that inflation is intractable. And there are some halfway decent inflation numbers too. So I don't know. I think I take the win until it turns into something else. I don't think there's any reason to suppose we're heading for a recession. And meanwhile, those people, you don't hear Heather Cox Richardson made this point over the weekend. The Democrats don't talk very much about the stock market, even when it's good and when they might have had something to do with it because they think, not unreasonably, that it doesn't have that much to do with the well-being of the average American, which is also true.
True.
But on the other hand, a lot of average Americans have 401ks or something comparable to it. A lot of, Americans, I mean, the New York Times just did a whole piece about how it turns out that 401ks may not have been a really good idea. People who have them often wind up with less than they need to retire and stuff like that. And that may be true, but people do have 401ks. Stock markets tend to be good for 401ks. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily reach around to find some basis for gloom. It seems to me that the market certainly, although it's a little wavy, it's been performing very robustly over the last 2 or 3 years. So I don't know.
Oh, well, 100%, I agree, and I look at things too. Like I don't know if you follow the cryptocurrencies a lot too. That's a whole different market. That's a whole different brand. There's talks of that actually making a run now that the market's starting to really pick up again.
I mean, I may be very short-sighted about this, but you will never see me put any money into cryptocurrency. I just feel like it. I mean, obviously, people have made, insane amounts of money doing this. People have also lost insane amounts of money doing it, and I understand it so imperfectly that it would be really dumb for me. I think. I mean, I don't want anybody to go broke, but I also don't 100% trust this whole concept. We'll see.
And I'm with you on that. It's still almost as if you look at the stock market at the very beginning. It was like the Wild West.
Yeah. And I'm sure back in those days, people would have to say, could you explain the stock market to me? How does the stock market work? That's how I feel. Like every time cryptocurrency comes up, I feel like I need somebody to, sit me down and explain how this is going to work now. Anyway, thanks for your call, Joe. It was great. We got to keep moving here. Apparently somebody thinks that this is a business and economics show, but that's fine. I'll give it a try. Here's Tyler in Manchester. Hi, Tyler. Oh, I think I did the wrong thing.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, I didn't plan this to be like an economics and business show.
How hard could it be? Jim Cramer does it. How hard could it be?
Well, I think you could do a really good job at it, so we'll take a stab. So yeah, I just want to get your thoughts on the current rates of inflation, specifically in Connecticut, and then also the obviously difficult real estate market that's occurring at the moment, and just generally your thoughts on all of those things kind of combining in the perfect storm for people that are around my age.
I'm guessing you're around the age of somewhere between 35 and 45?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Accurate, yes.
Well, first of all, I feel your pain. I mean, I really do feel your pain. I think this is one of the problems is that, we are at a moment right now where somebody in your age bracket should be kind of putting on that surge economically, right? If you haven't bought a house or you just still have a starter home or something like this, this is kind of the time in your life where you make the kind of second leap forward. To do that, maybe some of your investments have had to work out okay. Your salary has to have kept pace with and possibly exceeded inflation. There also has to be a market out there. I mean, in terms of the real estate part of it, there has to be a market out there that's forgiving and that offers you meaningful choices that are affordable. And I think all of that stuff isn't happening. And I don't think it can be boiled down to one problem or another. I do think, inflation, we've been through a tough time with inflation. It does seem to be slowing down a little bit. The Fed is still very uncertain, or at least not willing to commit to any kind of rosy scenario. But
yeah, they're trying to refigure it out at this moment, it seems.
But the problem is, there's a real distance between that kind of calculation, those kinds of statements, the person standing there at a dry erase board, telling you the way things seem to be and maybe are going to be, and your own lived experience. Either you can afford the stuff that you need and want, or you can't. So, I don't have any magic formula for that. I do think the housing part of it is a place where I think government policy can be meaningful. I mean, I think as a society, we need to commit to the idea that people who are, gainfully employed, sometimes two-income households, should be able to afford a starter home, and then 10 years later should be able to afford a better home. And if that's not happening naturally, which I think is the case, it is not happening naturally. That's why you're calling this show right now. The government has to identify that as a priority and see what can be done. We may need a whole new generation of federally backed home loans and stuff like that.
Look at it as kind of like an investment, essentially, into the betterment of the people.
Yes. I mean, I think it's important. Yes, I think that is an investment in the betterment of the people. One of the problems that our society really starts around 1980 is that people stopped thinking about their homes as homes and started thinking about their homes as investments. Some of the problem, I don't know how much of it, some of the problem has been caused by that. People basically buying and flipping houses or buying houses, not with the idea of, we're going to live here for the next 20 years, we're going to raise our kids in this house. Instead, they're thinking, you know what? We're going to add a master bath upstairs and live in this dump for 5 years and fix it up, and then we're going to sell it for a lot more than we paid for it. And guess what? Actually, that's a strategy that will benefit some people and penalize others. But anyway, I feel your pain.
Well, then also the introduction of like Airbnb and VRBO obviously has changed the market in a certain way as well.
Absolutely. Which is also, that's people thinking, oh, I don't need this house, but I could use this house. And some of that is stuff that, we have to address as a society, maybe not through government intervention, but just recognition that we have a problem here. How are we going to deal with it? Anyway, Tyler, I wish I was smarter about all this, but I gave you as good as I had. All right. So we're good right now. I'm going to give out the phone number again. Then we're going to talk to Lake Como Dave. 888-720-9677. 888-720-WNPR. And now, as promised, so you can call up right now and, whatever you want to talk about. We would like some people who are not a male. I have to be careful now. Last time I said anything like this, the person was non-binary. Her name was Danielle. I'll never forget Danielle. She was quite cross with me. But anyway, we would like it not to be all men. Is that something I could maybe say? I don't know. Anyway, but we like talking to Lake Como Dave, too. So that's what we're going to do right now. Let's go. Lake Como Dave, you have the floor.
Thank you, Colin. And I would ask how you are, except I can tell by your voice you're better. So that's a good thing.
Much better.
And because the news of the day has given me such a tension headache, I'm going to stake out the esoteric turf maybe today.
Okay.
And since, anyone who listens to you or reads your columns knows that you're a kind of an avid theater goer, I know that you know what I mean when I say incidental music, which, maybe some folks are familiar. It's actually film music before there were films. It was some very famous composers wrote music not to be sung, but just to go with plays. Famous example was Felix Mendelssohn writing incidental music for Midsummer Night's Dream, stuff that takes place during scene changes or before each act. And then you had a composer I know you like to talk about, Shostakovich, wrote music for a very experimental production of Hamlet, back in the 20s or 30s, I guess. So my question, since you have gone to far more plays and theater productions than I have, I'm just curious, in all the time you've done that, have you ever seen a play that was presented with incidental music? We're going to leave musicals out of it because that's a different category.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard it used?
Off the top of my head, no. It's going to turn out that I have some huge blind spot in my mirror here. First of all, increasingly, because, this sounds like a continuation of the preceding call, but because of cost, I think you're less likely these days to see people commission music that they don't have to, or even more so. The kind of stuff that you're talking, like the Mendelssohn and stuff, obviously involves having live musicians there playing that stuff. A play that's not a musical, unless there's some reason, the creator really insists on it, that it's just completely intrinsic to the other ideas behind the show. It just, these days they're looking to cut costs, and we all know what's happening even in Broadway, where the pit bands are getting smaller, getting eliminated, and there's like digital substitutes and pre-recorded crap. And we should fall down on our knees and pray that, that there would be incidental music played by live musicians, in a situation that wasn't completely necessitated by the plot or something. So I don't know. I can't really think of it, but it's a really good question. Because the other thing I would say is that, one of the ways people learn music is that way. I mean, not necessarily plays anymore, but music. I'll give you an example. There is some episode of the TV series Bonanza. I'm dating myself now, in which the music from Francesca da Rimini is used. And I know of people who listen to that. And of course, this is before Shazam. This is like in the 60s. And they went, what is that? That's really cool. And then spent, 15 years of their lives trying to figure out what the heck that was. You couldn't Google anything. You couldn't do it. But, I mean, they heard this music, and it was obviously not boilerplate crappy music. It was clearly the work of a composer. I think that's even true with, the Gianni Scacchi thing with the Tots champagne commercial. People heard that. People who've never been to an opera in their lives and would tell you that they don't like opera, they heard that and went, that's really nice. What is that? How do I get that? I want that music. So I think it's great, when that does happen. I think it has a purpose. But I also think what's happening in live theater is cost cutting right now. So I think there are fewer little amuse-bouches like that, if you know what I mean, Dave.
And the other thing would be if you hired a group of musicians, even if it was like, a trio, and then the way theater works is not the way contracting musicians works, in that it's like, well, we hope the play runs for 6 weeks, but if we have to cut it short, then you'll be, you won't get hired for the rest of the time. People usually don't. Musicians are grateful for any work, but that kind of would mess with their schedule calculations. There is one play I know of, and I know that you'll remember it, which is Death of a Salesman, where Arthur Miller, though he's not generous enough to provide any musical guidance, he does say in his stage directions that the sound of a flute is heard, or whatever, during some transition. So that's one of the most embarrassing episodes for me when I was back in high school. I actually composed some little passages for a solo flute for a production we were doing, a high school production of Death of a Salesman, if you can imagine that. And I'm just glad that music manuscript is lost forever, because somebody could probably blackmail you with it.
All right, I'll tell you an embarrassing story about me that is sort of on point to what we're talking about. So I don't know, any number of years ago, I don't know when this was. Let's say it was like around 2015. Might have been some totally different year. So I was doing some work with Carolyn Kwan, artistic director, musical director, conductor, et cetera, of the Hartford Symphony. And I think I did 2 outdoor concerts with her where I was kind of the narrator and I was writing stuff for it. And one of them, we did a whole thing about Mendelssohn, and it was outdoors in the Simsbury Meadows, where there's a shell and where the symphony does routinely play. And so we start doing this thing, and I don't really remember anything about what I said, but we definitely were playing some of that Midsummer Night's Dream stuff, or they were playing it. And in the middle of all this, the heavens just open up. There's a freaking downpour. And so much so that a lot of the audience just left and never came back. And some people just took shelter and then kind of crept back out. But it was a really, really bad rainstorm. And so everybody regroups. We get back out on stage, and, like 1/4 of the audience maybe is still there. But, and we were going to do a show and stuff. And so during that rainstorm and then the withdrawal of the rain, it's like all the bugs in that summer meadow just woke up and thought, oh my God, I feel so great. I just had a great shower. And so they're just all flying around, because this isn't a meadow, not too far from the Farmington River. And I got back out on stage, and I started talking, and I inhaled a bug. I aspirated a bug, and like fully aspirated, and a pretty big bug too. It was like I'd aspirated one of the fairies from Midsummer Night's Dream. It was that big a bug. And then it was just like, I was trying to keep talking. I just had tears coming down my face. They're just that horrible feeling when there's, a fairly large bug lodged in your airways somewhere. And I don't really know how I got through it. I think I was really happy when the orchestra started playing again, but it took 15 minutes for my body to figure out what to do with that bug. So there, that's an embarrassing story too.
It could have been bears.
Could have been bears. There's always a worse story. That's going to happen soon. If it hasn't happened already in Connecticut, the symphony still does play out in those meadows. We're going to have a bear go up on stage at a symphony concert. And, hopefully the bear has studied the music, knows what it's supposed to do, knows when to play the triangles, whatever is involved. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. Oh, we got Iman. Iman, don't hang up. You're going to be the first person I go to. We've also got Bill. We got Chris. We got you if you call 888-720-9677. So we'll be back.
I told you not to play with that fire. You just had to give it a taste. And I'm trying to be a friend, but I fear how this will end. But don't say I didn't want you when you're sweating in the face. But when I know, you feel the heat, oh, I can see.
Not anyone can move.
Support comes from
Finally got you loose from the cage. I ain't trying to smooth you with flowers, baby. I'd rather make a pound with blade. Imagine all the lines that we could change. You don't even know the power you got in them legs. Pick up your face and be proud for once. Take off your cool but keep styling on her. Okay, now don't slack. I need all my rags. No, we don't hold back. Act like you know that. Go tell your own man. Go get your own man. Fly like a ghost man. Taking all I can. Just
Oh, I could just listen to that whole thing. Believe it or not, speaking of, it's not really incidental music. That's from a movie called Trolls World Tour, I believe. But it's Anderson .Paak, who I love. I worship Anderson .Paak. And Justin Timberlake, who I think is actually a better singer than a lot of people give him credit for. I realize he hasn't been languishing, because people don't think he can sing. But I think he's not just, well, never mind. That's a whole other conversation. And meanwhile, what I need to do right now is have a whole other conversation with Iman from New Haven. Iman, it's so good to have you back on the show. It's been a minute.
It has been a minute. It's good to talk to you. So I was thinking about a show that you did maybe a couple months ago at this point about plastic.
Mm-hmm.
And I have an idea about what we could do with that plastic. Imagining that we, got our act together, all packaging from now on was compostable. There are no more plastic forks. We still have this problem of lots of plastic that already exists.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what we could do is we could, compact it down, put it on a rocket and send it straight for the sun, incinerate it in the sun. And I think we'd actually be really good. And I'm curious if you think this is a good idea, if there are any flaws. I know it will be expensive, but I don't see any downsides to putting all our trash and all our plastic straight for the sun.
Well, far be it from me to pick holes or pick away at your ideas.
No, but please do.
Well, I mean, I think you've already hit upon it, which is you have to think about sort of not that it stops any billionaire these days who feels like having a vanity space program, but you have to think about sort of the environmental cost of launching rockets a lot of the time.
Oh, no. Oh, I forgot. Yeah, the rocket we got to do some sort of zero carbon emissions for rockets. They have to be solar powered rockets, going straight for the sun. I forgot that part.
Yeah, they could maybe have a solar sail or something once they got up there, but you got to get them off the earth. It's pretty hard to do. But, first of all, I think people like you should be paid a lot of money to sit around and think about things creatively and out of the box.
Sweet.
No, I really mean that. I think, one of the problems with decision making in public policy and other parts of American life and probably global life these days is a lot of the people who are paid to think about things don't have very interesting ideas. If they had really interesting ideas, they wouldn't have gotten the job in the first place because they would have really started to bug people. So, I think that's a really interesting idea. I actually don't think it's, it could even be, when you think about the volume of plastic, even if you compact
it's
it
a
all,
lot.
even if you compact it, the amount of plastic that we have to deal with, I don't think there's any way that it could be environmentally cost effective or just cost effective to do something like that. But let me just say this because it's a compliment. So, in the middle of a possibly unworkable idea, there are often little grams of genius located here or there. Even if that idea doesn't work, there's something about your idea that's worth preserving. I just don't know what it is yet. Anyway, you have the floor.
Okay. Well, I was just going to say, I see your point. I just also think, we're thinking about how to get rockets of people so that we can like seed other planets and live on other planets, which also seems like not very necessarily cost effective. And like we could like actually move our trash. Like we don't really have a great way to deal with our trash. Like we have 8 billion people on this planet. We produce a lot of trash. We're always consuming, and we don't have a great way to deal with our trash, and we should figure it out. And maybe, I don't know, I think getting it off the world, but not sending it to another world. Actually, Venus is a planet that's like, very, like, I don't know, like sulfuric acid storms. Like send our trash there. It will be like completely destroyed. It's a little bit closer. I don't know. I just think if we're willing to try and send masses of people to other planets that we don't even know can support life, why not just like get our trash off this planet and make it a better place to live?
I mean, just for the sake of conversation, first of all, I think we have to consult the recent scientific work of Terrence Howard vis-a-vis Venus, because I think Terrence Howard thinks, I don't know, I didn't get to watch this whole Joe Rogan thing. I just watched little clips of it. I think he thinks like Venus is going to be the new Earth or something. I don't know. I couldn't quite follow it. But he did mention Venus. And as we know, Terrence, talk about somebody who thinks out of the box. Talk about somebody who maybe shouldn't be paid to have more ideas. But yeah, I mean, shooting garbage into space. First of all, we already do, of course, leave quite a bit of garbage in space.
Yeah,
we already
do.
figured that out, how to get garbage up into space. But
it can't just rotate around us. It has to go someplace where, like, you know, like burn it up, or it has to go someplace like where it's supposed to be.
I guess my concern would be, I'm trying to think what the term for this is. There's an actual term within economics for what I'm about to say. But you're basically you might be creating a permission structure to not deal with, I mean, if we could just shoot it all into space, let's say we could do that.
Sure.
You know, you're not really telling people what they need to hear, which is stop using so much plastic.
No,
we're like, we don't have to stop using plastic. We just shoot it over to Mercury. But, you know, I love that you're thinking about this, and I totally mean that. Whenever you call up here, you ask a question that nobody else in the world would ask, and I think it's great. So don't stop. Don't change, okay? Okay, you're a very valuable contributor to this show. And you know, really, I'm totally serious. Somewhere in there is a really good idea. You might not have it yet, but it's there somewhere. All right, time to move on. We're going to talk to Bill. Bill is in Middletown. Hi, Bill. You have the floor.
Hi. Well, thank you. I recently got a link from my son that was a piece by Woody Harrelson talking about RFK Jr. Now, before I heard this, I kind of thought he was a flake, and I had a lot of misconceptions about him. And when I heard this piece by Woody Harrelson, I was flipped over. I said, you know what? He's been people have been not portraying him accurately, and you know, he's had years of fighting corporations, Monsanto, GE, and he has that mentality to kind of right those wrongs. I mean, he had 14 years of drug addiction, but he learned a lot from that. And being a lifelong Democrat, I am very conflicted about can I support a third-party candidate, but I so like what he says and stands for. So I was wondering what you might think about this issue.
Well, I mean, first of all, obviously, Woody Harrelson, voice of reason. I mean, it just rolls off the tongue. But I haven't read the piece that you're talking about, so I wouldn't change my vote based on something that Woody Harrelson told me, almost no matter what that was. But let me just say this about RFK, because he's an interesting RFK Jr. He's an interesting example of something, which is that, you know, we've started to experience public life as a very binary system where people either have good ideas or bad ideas. They're either good people or bad people. And the reality is, and for most of our lives and for most of history, it's been more complicated than that. So RFK Jr. as an environmentalist has a sterling record. I mean, he really does have a sterling record. He could run for certain things on that record. And yes, his skepticism of big business is warranted and part of a tradition that progressives, people who grew up on the left, are very familiar with. I think with RFK Jr., the difficulty in his case is being able to discern between good ideas and bad ideas. He has some really good ideas. He has some really, really bad ideas. And he doesn't seem to know the difference. And he's very resentful of anyone who wants to suggest that there is a difference. And I just was, they re-aired his conversation with David Remnick on Sunday. And one of the things I noticed is just how outraged he gets, when anybody, and Remnick's not a particularly confrontational interviewer, but he
was very caustic.
Yeah, he just blows up, if anybody suggests that he has no business suggesting that school shootings are triggered by antidepressants.
Right.
And when Remnick does bring that up, I'm just doing this from memory, but my recollection of RFK goes, well, what is the explanation? You don't have any explanation. So, it's like, just because we don't have an explanation beyond, of course, the availability of high magazine guns and stuff like that, that doesn't mean that your theory, which you pulled totally out of the ether, is right. And I just find that his inability to argue his points when he runs into any kind of resistance suggests that, yes, he can be very proud of his record as an environmentalist, but, all this stuff about the stuff in the drinking water is making people, into trans people, it just doesn't really belong as part of American discourse, although American discourse has become so degraded, I suppose almost anything can attain membership. But I would encourage you to at least do a little bit more reading, a little bit more thinking. Don't change your vote yet.
I have been researching much more. And by the way, Woody Harrelson was not the center of that piece.
No.
He was just the kind of the background
right.
noise. But I listened to that piece on Sunday, and I thought the interview, whatever his name is, was very. He kind of attacked RFK and didn't seem to let him finish things. But I have to find out more about some of these things.
You do, and
I
one thing I will tell you, and this hasn't been publicized as much, but if you're looking for a more enlightened policy on Gaza than you've been getting lately, you should understand that RFK, unless he changes his position, which he may for political reasons, is a real hawk on Israel. And in the past, prior to the current conflict, used to refer to the Palestinians as the most pampered global minority in the world, which doesn't seem to square with reality at all. So just, find out all of his stuff, because I think we're all a little bit seduced by the Kennedy mystique. And he's not really it, as his family would happily tell you. But Bill, thanks for calling and sharing your thoughts with me. I really do appreciate that. And we're going to go straight from there to another third-party question, and then we're going to talk about movie theaters. So we still had a person with double X chromosomes? Nobody has called, right, under those circumstances. All right, so here's Chris from Wethersfield. Hi, Chris. Oh, wow, my bad. I still haven't gotten used to this phone. Hi, Chris.
Hi.
We do have a double X chromosome person. Yay.
Just here. I've been doing some curious thinking about a third-party approach. I think we have a third party called the unaffiliated, and I kind of understand how difficult it would be to kind of have a third party, like Democrat, Republican, and a third party, whatever we call it. However, I think that we can have a party within the two parties that exist. Like Bernie Sanders calls himself a social democrat, we could have people on both sides calling themselves an independent Democrat and an independent Republican, and it shows, number one, they can think. It doesn't have, they're not totally, abiding in one way or the other. They can choose what solution is good for the moment. And sometimes it can be from another party, but that's why they're independent.
Yeah, and I think that does happen to a certain degree. You mentioned some examples, and there's Jim Jeffords and Angus King, and there's Kristen Sinema, I think at a certain point was no longer part of the Democratic Party.
But we make it a real label.
Yeah, and that's a problem. I think on a state-by-state basis, you see quite a bit of third-party activity. And you see look at Connecticut. Connecticut had a third-party governor and had an incumbent senator re-register with a new party and win that election. Might not have been the best thing that ever happened, but yeah, I mean, and it's pretty much true around the country. The problem with it is at the national level, and it's a problem that people don't talk about very much, is the so-called contested election. That's when nobody gets 270 electoral votes. And if nobody gets 270 electoral votes, the election gets thrown into Congress, and through a fairly bizarre system too. But the Congress winds up picking both the president and the vice president in a manner that we really don't want. Our presidential election system is set up for two parties. And a significant performance, the closest this ever came was the George Wallace year, where I think maybe 2 or 3 states had gone slightly differently. Wallace was the last third-party candidate to get electoral votes, to get any electoral votes. And he was very close to getting enough so that we could have had an election that was thrown into Congress, which I don't think anybody wants. So, yeah, I think third parties are fine. And I think sometimes well-established politicians either, as you say, decide to start calling themselves something else while staying registered and caucusing with their actual party, or just declaring themselves not to be in the party anymore and either caucusing or not caucusing. And that's all fine, And, when you look around, there's actually a fair amount of bipartisanship these days. There's a lot of polarization. But if you look at the legislation that's been passed, say, over the last 4 years, a lot of significant bills like the infrastructure bill and stuff like that have been passed bipartisanly. So at least I think that one was bipartisan. Had a few Republican votes. So, but anyway, thanks for your thoughts. And, we will see. We will see what we will see. Okay, I can squeeze Mike in there. Then we're going to take a break. We'll come back. I will have open lines, and those lines can be filled by you calling 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR. Here is Mike from Woodbury. Let me just see if I can do this right for us. Hi, Mike. You're on the air.
Hi, Colin. How are you?
Just fine.
This is small potatoes compared to some of your previous calls.
We like small potatoes. We like small potatoes. And we like hills of beans, too.
Right. Well, I have a great little movie theater right near me in Southbury. It's a multiplex, and it's a mom and pop. It's not part of a chain. You go there, they run 3 trailers, and then the movie starts. However, if there is a movie in IMAX or it's not playing at my local theater, I am forced to go to the AMC in Danbury, and it is literally a half an hour. A half an hour. I've timed it before the movie starts. It's like 8 trailers. I don't mind trailers so much, but then the M&M ads, and then the dreaded Nicole Kidman. This is a place of magic. It's like, I can't believe that they are not getting inundated with complaints about this. But if they are, they're not doing anything about it.
It's been a problem for a long time. There was a piece of proposed legislation more than a decade ago, which we referred to as the Fleischman Law. Andy Fleischman, then a member of the Connecticut House of Representatives, proposed that there has to be some kind of honesty in posting film times. That
really?
That you really,
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, this is a piece of proposed legislation. It did not make it through, but everybody knew what he was talking about right away. Because this problem didn't start yesterday.
It's gotten worse.
Yeah. Wait a minute. I want to know what the theater is where they only show 3 trailers. What theater is that?
It's called the Riverside Theater in Southbury.
Oh,
it's really great.
It's so nice.
It's a small theater, really comfortable seats. They recline, and there's 6 or 8 theaters, and literally they run 3 trailers, and then the movie starts.
It gets to be a real problem with, say, Killers of the Flower Moon. Which is like
half a day.
3 hours and 45 minutes or
4
something,
hours.
whatever it is,
Yeah.
4 hours. And then,
Half an hour.
if you're stupid enough to show up there at the time they tell you to show up, it's even longer. You're already tired by the time the movie starts. So, and I think what's happened now is we're all playing this kind of game of chicken or something where we think, okay, so it's just 3:30. Probably doesn't mean 3:30. It probably means what? Well, if I got there at 3:45 and walked really slow from my car, and then bought something, everybody has a story or a memory of getting burned by that. Like the one time you do that is the one time that for whatever reason, they showed 12 minutes worth of stuff and then they actually get going, and you miss the you miss the beginning of the movie.
I went to the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes this week at AMC, and a lot of people came in like seconds before the movie started, so they obviously knew what was going on.
Right. Two big rules: ape not kill ape, and movie not start on time.
Right.
But yeah, no, you have a lot of company. You have a lot of friends out there who agree with you. So I don't know what good that does, but it does. It's nice to have friends anyway.
Makes me feel better.
Yeah. So feel better. And then the other place sounds great. If we're a little closer, if I could get some garbage and put it in my car and go to the movies and then drop the garbage off someplace, some plastic off someplace that Iman would approve of, I don't know. Everything would kind of work out somehow. We'll take a little break. We'll come back with more.
Don't paint me a picture. I'd rather ride alone. Whoa. I got me a system. I don't even need a crystal ball. The sweet premonition is pretty convincing after all. 'Cause I'm sure I know what the future holds and what cards are gonna fall.
And Kat Pastor in the house is our technical producer. And Jonathan McPants is the producer of this episode and the person screening the calls and doing everything else. We're going to take a few more calls here. It's Ask or Tell Me Anything. The numbers are 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR. We're going to start out with Mary Jane. We've also got Eric and who knows who else. Maybe you. So Mary Jane, you're going to get us started in North Stonington, whereas we have pointed out in the past, it is overrun with mountain lions.
Okay, I just wanted to piggyback on to the lady who wanted to send the garbage for the sun.
Yeah.
I think that if we could get someone to change plastic bags, because the same people that like to recycle and are conscientious have all these bags in all their garbage pails, waste baskets, and leaves. So I think a chemist could do that in probably a couple of days, but we're not attracting our scientists into commercial stuff. Medicine they go for, but things like pollution, it doesn't seem like the chemists are onto it, and I think they could solve a lot with plastic.
Well, not to reduce everything to the almighty dollar, but I mean, first of all, there are compostable plastic bags and plastic bags that are made using, I don't know, cornstarch or something. I mean, that exists. There are biodegradable plastic bags. I'm sure they're much more expensive to make. The goal of all of the people who are in charge of decision making around something like this want to do everything as cheaply as they possibly can. So you have to make it a virtue. In addition to, I mean, I think the science. You're right. Science is easy, or relatively easy. Making the science.
To make it commercial, that's very, very hard.
Yeah.
I was thinking of more of something similar to wax paper, but strong, so that you got rid of plastic altogether.
Yeah. Well, that would be yeah, it's wonderful.
I enjoyed listening to that other person who called in.
That's the famous Iman. I should say, by the way, Mr. McPants pointed out to me that Iman is presumably, well, he said, according to him, because I said there were no XX callers at that point, and then Chris called, but that Iman had already called. But I think Iman is like a celestial being. I don't really even, I mean, she calls here pretty regularly. I don't know that I would describe any particular earthly biological attributes to her. I think she's, she could be out there looking, she could be out hovering next to the sun is what I'm saying.
True.
And possibly wishing. The other thing about her idea is, it does make me start to picture the sun as kind of, some burning cookie monster, me want plastic. Maybe the sun would really enjoy plastic. The sun needs stuff to burn. It's running out. It's going to, it's not going to be a sun in a few billion years. A little plastic might help. They might be glad to get it. All right. So we have to move on, and we are going to do that. We are going to move on to Eric. And by the way, we do have a little bit of time and an open line or two if you want to get a last-minute comment in here. 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR. Hi, Eric.
Hi, Colin. I just decided to call because after I had heard the person who called in about sending trash to the sun, I have an idea that I'm very excited about, but I think it would make a very difficult sell. And that would be, you had a program a while ago about the fact that we spend an exorbitant amount of time, effort, and resources on the process of deciding how much we should pay in federal income taxes and all the waste that goes along with that. And you had a person on there which you interviewed who figured out how, somehow calculated the amount that he would have to pay for defense and decided not to pay that much. But anyway, I was thinking, what if we were to eliminate the federal income tax for all but the top 10 or 15% of income earners and replace it with a federal energy tax, which everyone would pay? And the way it would work is that the federal government would tax the utilities, which would pass that tax down to the consumer. So in other words, instead of collecting its revenue directly from something like 200 million income earners, it would be collecting from maybe, hypothetically 1,000 utilities, which would, of course, be collecting their revenue from the taxpayers. I think that this would be a very efficient system because every household, business, and industry uses energy. So that taxing energy would be an efficient means of distributing the tax burden throughout the entire economy. And also having fewer points or fewer sources from which to directly collect its revenue would probably lower the administrative costs substantially, and the savings from that could be used to provide income assistance for people with low income.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I mean, I'm glad you're getting to that because the proposal itself is pretty regressive. I mean, theoretically, the reason to have graduated income tax is to place the highest burden on the people who can the most afford to pay it. And, if you go back to the 40s and 50s, the top brackets were, incredibly high. And when I say theoretically, it's because obviously you have, an awful lot of rich people in this country who don't pay any taxes at all. It's not really working the way it's supposed to. But you don't want to create a tax. I mean, the problem it's not just the poor, it's just like a middle-class person, or let's use ducks instead. A middle-class duck and Scrooge McDuck, their energy costs are probably not all that different. I mean, Scrooge McDuck probably has a bigger house and a little bit, probably maybe even a more gas guzzling car. I don't know. But if you're deriving most of your tax revenue from energy consumption, you're penalizing people who don't have as much money. So we want to try to avoid that. All right, we have to stop. I'm getting the word. We got to stop. Show's over. That's good. I'm all out of ideas anyway. Thanks for listening. Thanks for calling.